Repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. All right, good evening all. Nice to see you all here. Thank you for showing up. Anyone here for the first time, maybe tonight? What brings you here?
See what it's about.
See what's about?
This.
This. You're just randomly walking by and said, I'll go into that place?
I wouldn't say it was random, no. I had a plan.
Yeah. Well, I hope that plan works out for you. Glad you're here. What's your name?
Brock.
Brock. Welcome, Brock. Anyone else here for the first time? And those of you who keep coming back, why do you keep showing up? What's the purpose?
I like to meditate in community. At least some of the time. Yeah.
Do you see a big difference from at home versus here?
Yeah, my mind settles down more when there's some group energy going in that direction. And I also like being with a group of people who would like to live a little more consciously.
Yeah. Thank you. What else? Why show up? Those of you keep coming back.
I feel like this place has been a source of consistency in my life, and a lot of other things have changed. It's steady.
That's a really common kind of theme within, Dharma Buddhist teachings is that, the ultimate teaching of impermanence is that everything is changing always. Everything around us constantly changing. We are constantly changing. The teachings are there. And they're the same, but that doesn't mean they don't change the way we integrate them into our lives. And so the practice is really to figure out how do we take these very basic, fundamental, core Buddhist teachings, which are really pretty simple to understand, and ultimately just incredibly difficult to then put into our day-to-day lives, because everything around us is going to change constantly. So as it changes, how do we respond to it? And can we respond to it with, open mind, open heart, kindness, compassion, or anger, hatred, things like that. So, what else? One more. Anyone who wants to share? Anybody? Yeah.
This is only my third time, but I left a religion that I was in for my whole life, and I'm just looking for a place that has some wisdom to share.
What was the first part of what you said? You left?
I left a religion that I've been in my whole life, and so now I'm looking for some wisdom.
Yeah.
From places.
And do you think in the 3 times you've been here, you've gained some sort of wisdom?
Well, I appreciate a religion that really relies on subjective experience and allows people to kind of explore for themselves. So
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you may have heard me say this already, but it's one of the most common, for me, one of the most common, especially early on, expressions that I think is important for people to hear, which is, don't seek to be like the Buddha, seek what he saw. And I think it's really important that often, especially for the most part, most Western people coming from a different religious background, is this idea that we're trying to become like someone or something. And the Buddha was like, I'm just a dude. Don't try to be like me. You know, he had his own madness to deal with, his own challenges, his own difficulties, and he figured out how to bring a way of life into that made him kinder, gentler, and happier and more peaceful. And so I've always really kind of admired that piece of the practice, that you're just, what he was seeking was to figure out how to end suffering, or as I like to refer to it, as suffer less. And in the process of him working on how to end suffering and suffering less, I take a lot from those teachings, which is how can I in my life, again, I don't plan on ending my suffering anytime soon, you know, but can I suffer a little bit less today than I did yesterday? And if I can apply some of this to do that, then, you know, it's great. So, well, welcome. Anyone else want to share before we start? Yeah.
I think for me, I am a forgetful person, just like how crazy I am. And I need to come in a place like this as often as I can. So this and some other things that I do are a regular part of my routine and a commitment for me to just to come and get regrounded, because I can go off very rapidly and think that I got everything all figured out on my own.
For sure. The reminders.
Yeah.
Why do you think I've been sitting here doing this for 18 years? I've just been talking to myself every single day.
Exactly.
You know, one of these days I might listen. There's some pretty good stuff around a place like this. You know, if I could put half of this stuff into my life, then I'd be so good.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was one more hand, and then we'll sit. Yeah.
It was kind of what we said, and how are you?
Good to see you. Yeah.
And it was always said about meditating with a group of people, even though you're not speaking, you're not doing anything as a group, we're not holding hands, and all that. There's a certain energy that, yes, people kind of in that same mind space. It creates an energy for me. That's for me to come and meditate here. And that's why, and also I sometimes have to leave early because I need to be home at 8 o'clock. So if I get up, I get a quarter till, it's not because I'm bored or anything. But I love to them for the group meditation because it's so much better than for me than just doing it alone.
Yeah. And don't worry, Gary, we talk about you after you leave, so it's all
there you go.
It's all good things, though, so don't worry. Yeah. All right, so we'll start with the meditation practice. And for those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free to say hello as you are. If you have any comments or thoughts when we get there, put them in the chat box there as well. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is it working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are in a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, also just trying to sit up straight. Relaxing the shoulders, hands can be on the knees and the lap, whatever's comfortable for you. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. We'll start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought. Return to breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from your practice. Just sitting. Breathing. learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, and no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us. He began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, and focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation and Buddhism don't fix that. It helps you become aware of why your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, so you can then make changes in your life. Learning to be with life as it arises is incredibly difficult, challenging. We spend so much of our lives running from place to place, and that gets tiring. This practice is learning to sit, to become aware of everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do, and the intentions behind them. And are the intentions behind your thoughts and words and actions filled with greed, anger, ignorance? Or are they filled with generosity, compassion, and wisdom? This is ultimately the practice, and it doesn't change. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do in every moment. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. So much of our lives are spent focused on others. And this practice is an opportunity to focus on yourself. And with that, we take that into the world. Working to create change around us. But again, from a place of love and compassion, not from a place of anger and hatred. That's very difficult. So we practice. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I always really prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhism, anything you're sitting with. And to those that are joining virtually, again, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free as you are to say hello. If you have any questions, you can put them on the chat box. I'll do my best to respond. So we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening and just open up to questions.
I'm so new to meditation, and if you go on YouTube, there's like 10,000 ways of breathing, I know probably the best answer is like just find kind of what works for you, but I don't even know one thing to start with. Is it, where should your eyes be, or what should your breath be doing?
I'm going to give you.
So lost that like I'm just thinking about how lost I am all the time.
Yeah, I hear you. So I'll give you 10,001. Right? A couple things. And for those virtually maybe didn't hear it, the question was around you being new to meditation, and you go on YouTube and see 10,000 different ways of meditation and where to breathe, and so you're in essence saying that you're just lost and where to even begin, where to put the eyes, the breath, things like this. So let me just kind of back up a little bit and say, if 1,000 people lead you in meditation, they're going to lead you 1,000 different ways. None of them are necessarily right or wrong or good or bad. They're different, right? We're different people. We like different places. We like different foods. We like different things. So same thing with meditation in a big picture world, right? If any of them tell you that, it's the way and the only way, and then they hit you up for a bunch of money, you should probably find one of the other paths, but, whatever works. So I always like to start there. The second thing is that from the Buddhist teaching specifically, it really begins with what's called the Anapanasati Sutra, where he talks about meditation, breathing, samadhi, as it's called. And he says, initially, if you're breathing in and taking a short breath, know you're breathing in and taking a short breath. If you're breathing out and taking a long breath, know you're breathing out and taking a long breath. So what he very specifically from that piece was talking about was simple awareness of sensation of breath. I'll get to eyes and what to do with your ears and toes and all that in a minute, right? But starting with simple awareness is simply observing sensation of breath. Now, for me, I'm very biased as a Zen practitioner, which is really based off of this. So keep that in mind. You can Google it and find everything different from what I'm talking about, but I'm just going to share from my experience. So the awareness of sensation of breath is what we're working with. I'm not a big fan of kind of the forced breaths. For me, even just in the way that I lead, and you'll see our Dharma Bum Temple, we probably have 20 different people to lead, and they're all going to lead you different ways, even here. But for me, I like to start with those 3 deep breaths at the beginning, where I say start with taking 3 deep breaths, because I just feel like it's a time for everybody just, okay, let's take a couple deep breaths, whatever madness you just went through today, whatever craziness, whatever stress, anxiety, panic, fear, worry, whatever hell you were in out there, just sit down, shut up, and take a couple deep breaths, right? And then settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Again, I'm not a fan of forcing breaths with meditation. I feel like then what happens is almost what you described, then people are too worried about, am I breathing the right way? Do I go in through this nostril and out through that nostril? Do I go in through this ear and out that ear? I'm just a fan of sitting and breathing and being aware of sensation of breath. And when you're in that space, for me as a practitioner with meditation, it's important to understand, and you've heard it all of 3 to 4 times now. When I say at the beginning, nothing's going to happen, you're not going to float, you're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. I'm really driving that home, especially for people who are new, who are sitting there thinking, am I doing this right? Is it working yet? And trying to get people to abandon this idea of it working. Because for me, coming from Buddhist teachings, it's a concentration and focus on present moment. There's nothing special about the present moment other than everything, but it's just the present moment. I give you an example. Are you with me so far? Does it make sense? Okay. What I'm working on for meditation is, as I'm sitting here in meditation, breath in, breath out, thought arises, right? Say it's hunger. Thought arises, hunger, recognize, release, back to breath. Breath in, breath out, next thought arises, hunger. So I've been doing this a long time. My mind still races 1,000 miles an hour. That's not the problem. Thought arises, release it, come back to breath. What I don't want to do, thought arises, hunger. Hungry. What do I want to eat? I want a burrito. I'm going to Pokies. I want chips. I want sauce, right? And so one single thought of hunger, I'm sitting there for 20 minutes thinking about a burrito I want to eat. And I'm just hungrier now than I was 20 minutes ago. Now, why is this important? You're all of 25 years old? How old are you?
27.
That's pretty close, right? You've been angry about something for 10 years? 5 years?
More or less, yeah.
Yeah, right? I mean, I wouldn't say 50 because you're only 27 years old. But, we got people in here who've been holding on to anger for 3 months to 30 years and everywhere in between. Now, When you're angry, what are you focused on?
What they did to me.
What they did to you. How long ago? 10 years ago. Now, learning to stay in present doesn't mean what happened in the past didn't happen. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't mean it was good. It doesn't mean you should forget about it. It doesn't mean you should let it go. Normally when somebody says to me, let it go, I just want to punch them. Right? The idea of letting it go, I'm not a fan of that. Because it makes it sound as if you're just dismissing it as it's not important. But to me, the ability to train the mind to be present is choosing when you want to look at the past, both good and bad, so we can learn from it, from those experiences, but not spend 3 years sitting there staring at it. And what that really is a training of the mind to come back to the present moment. So meditation, we're just learning to be with life as it is. When we experience anger, sadness, depression, the mind is often in the past. When we experience fear, anxiety, panic, worry, the mind is where? Future. Present moment. If you focus on one thing, you could use sensation of breath, you could use a candle, you could use a bottle of water, you could use anything. If you focus on one thing, what are you not focused on? Everything else. And when you focus on everything else, how does that tend to make you feel? Not great. So the practice is to learn to just be present. Make sense? Yeah. Yeah. What else? So there's a question here. It says, hi from Chula Vista. How do I follow the Eightfold Path every day? And how does meditation fit into the Eightfold Path? So a couple things, again, just to put in context. Eightfold Path, the very first teaching of the Buddha were the Four Noble Truths. And to sum those up in like 60 seconds, because you can Google all that for free. The first thing he said is life is filled with dukkha, which is suffering, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. Right? Doesn't mean all of life sucks. Doesn't mean all of life is filled with heavy trauma and death and loss and pain. There's a lot of that goes on in our lives, but life is also filled with little things. You know, the food wasn't prepared the right way. We don't like our coffee. We don't like the cookie we got. Whatever it is, our food is constantly a little bit off, and everything in our lives throughout our day is a little bit off, and so we struggle because of that. Right? This is what the Buddha said. Life is filled with these moments of discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. The second thing he says is the cause. The cause of suffering is greed, anger, and ignorance. So we practice generosity, compassion, wisdom to overcome greed, anger, and ignorance. The third is the ending of suffering, nirvana, liberation, freedom from suffering. And the fourth is the path. And this is what the question is about. The path is the Eightfold Path. So what specifically is the Eightfold Path? It's having the right or correct or healthy, whatever word you want to use, how it's translated, views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. Views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. Now, the interesting thing about what you asked, which is often most common, I can't see you. I'm just staring at a little tiny screen thing there. But why do you think most people come into Buddhist places to learn what? Meditation. Where is meditation on the Eightfold Path? Towards the end, right? View, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and then concentration. Mindfulness is an awareness of what's happening in each moment. And a concentration is an intense level of focus on each present moment. So you're concentrated and focused on the present moment and fully aware of what's happening around you at all times. So mindfulness and concentration is 7th and 8th on this path. But again, often we think, well, I'm just going to meditate and everything's going to be fine. You know, if you're an angry, pissed off person and you meditate, you're just an angry, pissed off person who meditates, right? So concentration, meditation, to your question, that's where it fits in, is towards the end. But what the beginning of the Eightfold Path is really addressing is first with the view. And you talk about, how to work these in every day. My suggestion before I get into them briefly is, instead of focusing on all of them at once, and how do I pack all of these into my day? And we look at, say, the Paramitas, these practices of generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom, anything with Buddhism. I don't suggest you figure out how do you pack it all in one day. Pick one. Right? If you lack patience, say, okay, for this week, I'm going to focus on patience. If you lack diligence or effort, say, for this week, I'm going to focus on one. So I think it's good to break them down a little bit instead of trying to pack all of them into your day, especially if you're new at it. But having the correct view, understanding that if you put these practices into your life, the good chance that you'll suffer less and others will suffer less is the reality. As the Buddha said, try these things. Don't believe them just because I'm saying them. Try them, put them into your life and see if they work. If they don't, abandon them. So again, even back to your earlier question, he was saying, try this. If you don't like it, that's cool. He probably didn't say that exactly, but you get my point. So the first one is having the correct view. The second one is, and third and fourth really, is thought, speech, and action. And this is addressing your karma. Very often people think karma is what goes around comes around. We think karma is getting what you deserve. They did bad stuff, they're going to get bad. They did good, they're going to get good. Karma is not what you get, karma is what you give. It's what you bring into the world. It's like if you're shooting pool, the cue ball, the white ball, you are the cue ball. And every time you hit the cue ball into the rack, every ball goes in a different direction. So our entire lives, we are that cue ball. Every person, place, and thing we encounter, we leave an imprint. And that's why it's very important to be very mindful of what you think and what you say and what you do in each moment, because that is impacting lives. Very critical to watch that. So 2, 3, and 4 with the Eightfold Path is looking at thought, speech, and action. What do you think? What do you say? And what do you do? And that's why for me, with the meditation practice, it's always looking at body, speech, mind. What do we think? What do we say? What we do? Then you look at livelihood and effort. Before we get to mindfulness concentration, livelihood is really how are you spending your days? If you're a student, what are you studying? What are you working on? What do you want to do the rest of your life, so to speak? Career-wise, where's your intention with your job? What do we do on a day-to-day basis with how we bring these teachings into our lives? And effort, great Zen Master Dogen would say, practice if your hair's on fire, right? I mean, I don't have to worry about that so much, but if your hair was on fire, you wouldn't just sit there and let it burn. You'd be working really hard and putting it out. And to me, that's just kind of an example of the suffering that we experience, right? We experience suffering in our lives. We're like, I'll get to that next week, And this is kind of the nature of your question, as I always say. You come here once a week, whatever it might be, or go anywhere once a week for a spiritual meditation practice is great. But what about the other 6 days of the week? Which is the nature of this question. How do you bring it into your life every single day? So first, the fact that you're actually even aware of that and that that's an intention of yours, you're on the right path, so give yourself a break a little bit. But don't be lazy. We can easily just bang through 10 hours of Netflix without even getting up to go pee. But all of a sudden we think about a meditation practice, a spiritual practice, yoga, whatever it is you do for your kind of spiritual journey, and we often put that on the back burner, so to speak. So don't be lazy with it. And then you get into mindfulness and concentration, which I've kind of already talked about. But see where you lack, or not even where you lack, but where you're struggling, where you find difficult. If you have difficulty with right speech, with gossip, with slander, try to take a day and, see what it's like to actually take a day and not talk about somebody. Could you imagine that? I mean, it's very specifically in the Buddha Sutras, right speech. Do not gossip, do not slander, do not use divisive speech. Right, very clear. I mean, just imagine going one day without talking about somebody else, without taping your mouth shut. It's really difficult. Forget a day, just try it for an hour. It's like, not even, it's almost 8 o'clock. Just try to see the rest of tonight if you can not talk about anybody else. So, I hope that helps. What else? Questions?
Sorry, I hope I'm not taking up.
You're good, man. Seriously.
But this is something that I've struggled with for a long time. I'm curious, what the Buddha's answer to this might be, but it seems like when I try to live more intentionally and be more in tune with people around me and stuff, the world just now is full of so much suffering. Just on your way to work, you encounter 10 people asking for help or in dire need, and it's really difficult when you're trying to live in tune with the world and everything. You want to help all 15 of those people, but you also have to get to work and you have to take care of yourself. And so then in order to take care of your family or take care of my wife and all this kind of stuff, it's okay, so then you kind of have to almost harden your heart And it's like, it's this really crazy balance that I have not been able to figure out. Like, am I hardening my heart towards these people that need my help, or am I just trying to exist in this world that's just full of suffering? And like, where's the balance of helping all these people that need it versus just trying to exist?
Yeah. No, beautiful question. And again, virtually, for those who didn't hear it, your question is around, as you're exploring this path and you're really kind of in tune and opening up to people around you, and on your way to work, you're seeing 15 people who are suffering, you want to help them, but you also have to help yourself and your family and personal lives. Where's the balance in the middle path? And as people often do, the response, I think you actually said in your question, and first and foremost, I'll just say, being so new to this stuff, man, just stay at this for like 10 years and you'll be golden, right? The teaching on the Buddha's practice of middle path, and you said it, to find that balance, is important here. But first, before I forget to touch on this, I want to be very clear that, just in the way you said it, that if you pass 15 people and you see their suffering and you choose not to do anything in that moment, as you say, that doesn't mean you're hardening your heart. I see people suffering every single day, everywhere you look. There are people suffering, right? Every single person in this room is suffering. Can I help all of them? You know that, I think a lot of religions kind of claim it, but do you know the jellyfish story? So, anyone here, don't give it away, but anyone here heard this story where the guy's walking on the beach with all the jellyfish, right? It's jellyfish, right? Starfish, thank you. I knew somebody would know it. Theo, I should have known you would know it, right? But so the starfish story is that there's a person walking on the beach, and all these starfish have been washed to the sand. And all of a sudden, they're dying because they need to be in the water. And so the person is picking them up and putting them back in the water. And there's hundreds of them. And somebody else walks up and says, what are you doing? And the person says, I'm, putting the starfish back in the water because they're going to die in the sand. And the person says, then there's hundreds of them or thousands of them. You can't, how's it going to make a difference? You can't possibly help them all. And the person has the one in his hand, in their hand, and says, it makes a difference to this one. Right? So I think there's a lot of pressure one may put on themselves, especially when they start this journey, that makes it sound like you have to liberate all sentient beings from suffering, that you have to go out and save the world. Make a difference to yourself, first and foremost. If you continue to cultivate the sense of love and compassion towards yourself, that will radiate beyond what you can even imagine. And if you walk by 15 people who are suffering, and you don't give them a penny, and you don't hand them food, and you don't hand them a drink, that doesn't mean you're an asshole, right? But feel their suffering. Experience their suffering. I mean, you're here on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock asking about that. That means your heart is open. So don't judge yourself. Very dangerous around spiritual practices, especially when you get into it, especially with Buddhism. You can read this stuff on like Pema Chodron and Dalai Lama and Thich Nhat Hanh, and it all sounds like, you're supposed to do all these wonderful things every single moment. And then you go out and do stupid things, and then you start judging yourself and critiquing yourself, thinking, like, well, I'm being a bad Buddhist, right? We do what we can. Find a balance. There will be times in your life where it will be easy to help people. And there'll be times in your life where it will be incredibly difficult to help people. And yeah, when you begin to open up and actually hear and feel and see all the suffering in the world, it can be overwhelming. Which is why you need to cultivate a sense of love and compassion for yourself. Because if you don't, you'll burn out and you can't care for anybody. The oxygen mask, put it on yourself first before the child, same thing. So your heart's not hardening, it's actually opening. And the reason I said keep at this for 10 years is as you go on this journey, I just made up that number, it could be 10 weeks, could be whatever, it could be 10 minutes. But as you go on this journey, you'll continue to figure out the wisest ways to be able to make a difference in people's lives. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
I'm just going to draft off of the last one. I thought that was a great question. For myself, I would come here, when I first started coming here and I was meditating, and I would just be sitting and just be angry the whole time. And my anger a lot was around sort of homeless people, not at homeless people, but just the situation here, just my outrage at how this could happen here, you know. And I had all this anger, and why couldn't it get fixed? And I sort of had a realization that, again, this was just my big ego, that, you know, if the whole world just did what Greg wanted them to do, then everything would be perfect, and there would, you know, everybody would have a home, and we would be perfect. And just using this space to have, again, go back to my crazy thinking, having a little humility, and then this kind of leads to my pitch. What I started doing is they do have an opportunity to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches here on Thursdays, and go downtown and go deliver those. There, right before I came here, I was a path volunteer, cooked downtown and served people. That's part of the temple. And having the humility to know I didn't save anybody tonight. I served shepherd's pie and salad, and that's fine, you know. Yeah. It's a step for me to find that humility and just do a small thing. Yeah. To your point, that's my karma, is just do a little small thing.
Yeah, there's people in our lives everywhere that we can help, you know, including ourselves. And so it's again, cultivating a sense of wisdom and compassion to some extent that allows us to see who and how and where and in what ways we can help and be of service.
At 4:30 on Thursdays. At 4:30.
You know, I think when you look at, in Buddhism we call the Bodhisattva Path, Bodhi is enlightened, Sattva is being, but this Bodhisattva Path, the vow truly of the Bodhisattva is to be reborn life after life, to liberate all sentient beings from suffering. You know, and that's a pretty heavy vow to take, you know, to continue to be reborn life after life, to make sure all beings are free from suffering. And if you read that, come across that, my suggestion is to not necessarily take that so literally, because that's overwhelming. But as a practice, I think it's a wonderful way to think, how can I wake up each day and make life better for those around me, including myself. And you know, it has nothing to do with rebirth or reincarnation or any of that kind of stuff, but if we're blessed enough and fortunate enough to wake up each day, give some time and thought and effort and energy into how can I also, you know, make life a little bit better for others. Because in that process, you know, the one who's getting helped the most over here is Greg, you know? I mean, I'm sure it was phenomenal shepherd's pie, but
yeah.
I had like one time I was here like on another night, like I don't know who was here that night, but like I was explaining like that I like to give people dollars, like homeless people dollars, and then like it's kind of like technically I don't have any money, I've never had savings, I've always had debt, and like it's just kind of like good luck or something, you know, like. And somebody was like, well, you know, you don't have to do that. You can just talk to them for 5 minutes or something if you know, if you feel like, you know, you want to give them something but they can't afford it or something.
Yeah.
You know? So I thought that was really cool.
Exactly. The resources are not necessarily what's important. It's just the, you know, sometimes people just want to be seen.
Presence.
Yeah. They want presence, you know, they want to be felt, they want to smile, you know, so there's so much that, you know, even in passing, like you said, just a quick example of 15 people, you know, the simple act of smiling and saying hello to somebody and allowing them to feel like a human, you have no idea what a simple smile can often do for people.
Yeah.
So, what else? Any, do one more question before we close. Yeah, you're good. Me? Yeah.
So I think in my Buddhism practice, I really have focused on trying to let thoughts of negativity and that suffering, repetitive thoughts, kind of pass through me. And lately, I've been on the opposite end of that pendulum, where things have been really good, and those really good thoughts have also brought me back to the thought of like suffering is going to continue, and that's kind of stealing some of the joy of the good things that are happening in my life too. And I don't know. I don't know how to process that. You know, swinging back to the other side.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to expand or explain something else you said at the end, just so I can hear it differently. you said it's stealing the joy. Which part is stealing the joy? The swinging of the thoughts? Or just
the knowing that suffering is coming back.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not in a state of acceptance of that, and I can still want to avoid.
Oh yeah, that's going to suck.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, because, it's like, one of my favorites, there was this college kid named Pedro, and he asked this question one night, and he said, I'm afraid that people are judging me with everything I do. I worry that they are. And I looked at him, and I was leading a Buddhist discussion class, and I said, dude, you got nothing to worry about. They're absolutely judging you, right? Without question. Right? When the Buddha said life is filled with suffering, he wasn't joking. Often we skip that part. And of course, we're here because we don't want to suffer. Right? We want to be happier, kinder, gentler, find peace. Whatever people's motivation is, it's very similar. People are here because they'd like something in and around their lives to be a little bit better than it is, right? But that whole piece about life is filled with suffering, we often skip that. And we're often so quick to want to jump to, well, how do we get out of that? And so then when it comes, we resist it. Or we get crushed when it happens. Because as you said, you were in some negative thoughts, then you were in some positive thoughts. Buddhist teachings on impermanence, our entire life is going to be filled with moments that are filled with joy and happiness and sadness and sorrow. Guaranteed. As the Buddha said, we get birth, we get aging, we get sickness, and we get death. And then in the middle of that is a trillion impermanent emotions and thoughts and feelings that will swing the rest of your life. My suggestion is to work on, and this is in Buddhism we call them the 4 Brahma Viharas, loving kindness, it's called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Equanimity, I always think of like just this massive boulder, right? And you got like a little kind of stream. And the stream is just passing the boulders. Boulder doesn't move. The stream is going, right? So the practice of equanimity is to allow everything to just happen without being really too swayed by it emotionally. You're not ignoring it. You're not pretending it's not there, but you're feeling it. You're feeling the sadness and saying, oh, this is sadness. What I heard in your question was, no, I need to run quickly, immediately. I'm doing good. It's been 3 days. Leave me alone. Don't mess with me. Of course it's going to mess with you. Your life is going to crash so many times. I hate to tell you that. Right? With a smile on my face. But at least you're smiling about it too. But that's life. The danger is thinking that someday you're going to do some, like this, get to this place. And this is also the danger around any sort of spiritual practice, that you're just going to abide in some perfect place of equanimity and never be impacted. No, you're going to. But the practice is to try to be like that boulder. And when you're sad, be sad. Right? I came into this practice filled with anger and depression and misery. Right? And I learned at the beginning of this practice to see my anger and depression and just see it. You ever done anything really smart when you were really angry? No. So next time you get really angry, which will be sometime probably in the next 48 hours, I'm giving you a little slack, right? You know what you do with that anger? Nothing. Just sit with it. Because you know what that anger is? It's an emotion that will pass. You ever been really happy and excited? When that happens, sit with it. Learning to see both. And again, in your question, the root cause of Buddhist suffering is craving and desire of things to be different from how they are. And you, in your question, are saying you have a craving and desire for all the negative emotions, to use your words, to go away. Or negative thoughts, I think you said. Those are never going to happen. You're going to have negative thoughts your whole life. The thoughts are not the problem. The problem is what we do with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
See the pain and suffering, the sadness, the depression, the anger, sit with it. See the happiness, the joy, the excitement, the thrill, and sit with that. And, be the boulder. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah.
It's not easy, that's why we call it practice. But, you're here working on it, so you're doing all right. So I'm going to close on that, unless anybody has anything else they want to share. All right, so we'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Gracie during her time of suffering, and her family and friends who suffer at this time. May they all be at peace and free from suffering. All right, before you all head out, we have our Dharma Bum host Hazel has a few announcements for us.
Hello. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program meets every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten your seat cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay to close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and